Alrighty, hello everybody. Hope we're all doing well. Hope we're all having a good Wednesday so far. Yeah, I just about remembered what day of the week it was. Just about. Oh, it's turning into one of those weeks though. It's definitely turning into one of those weeks. Also, I don't think I started my bot off this morning. Let's do that. Late and unprepared. Story of my life. Story of my life. All right. You're going to ask me for a number that I do not know right now. One moment, please.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Hey, Rydog, how's it going? Welcome. I hope you're doing well. I need to go here. I need to go here, and then here, and then click on this. Then that's the magic number. Okay. And then Mario should dance. All right. As well as you can do, I guess. There. Oh. Yeah, definitely turning into one of those weeks. I'm enjoying the CakeyVerse stuff. Everything else is trying to grind me down into a little pile of bone dust. But honestly, until I can escape, I mean, that's just life right now. I will say what was quite nice without going into too many details this morning. I woke up in a place where I could just, in the same building, go to the toilet and have a shower. How pleasant. You got to call your father-in-law out over dinner in front of some of their family friends last night, so that was fun. Ah, shit. That's not good. Like, took you over the limit, or so hard right now. Like the world is just dividing itself on such almost like black and white style principles, and it's just where's the wiggle room? Did I sleep down by the seat? No, I did not, but I won't go into too many details. But yeah, I do find that the less time I can spend, he was drunk. One of them asked me a question. He decided he wanted to take over the conversation and go on a rant. When he finally finished and I started answering the original question, he decided to roll his eyes at me over what I was saying. He didn't put up with that. Nah, that's fair enough. Fair enough. Hopefully he'll have the balls enough to say sorry, and, you know, we all do stupid shit when we're drunk. The man doesn't apologize. I don't know where it came down that saying sorry was a sign of weakness, but it really isn't. Or if he does, he makes it your fault. Yeah, I know many people like that, unfortunately. Many people like that. I also chat, and again, don't ask questions. Got to see the new Running Man film yesterday. You left shortly after. It was neat. Oh dear. It was okay. Oh, definitely more true to the story. In some ways, I would say to its detriment. You know, the Arnie version is ridiculous and stupid, but there's a lot of fun and enjoyment in that over the top kind of video game version they put to Running Man. This one is definitely more true to the story. Definitely trying to be more. Now again, maybe when they first made Running Man, the Arnie one, they were truly really worried about violence in video games and how it was going to turn the world into this awful place. I don't know. Maybe they were trying to make the same statement that this new one seems to be making. But yeah, this new one is very obvious in its political statements. Wary of AI, fair enough. Fake news, all that kind of stuff. And it's definitely not a bad film. And if it had been directed by anybody else, I may have even gone on to say it was an okay film. The fact that it's an Edgar Wright film makes it a pretty bad Edgar Wright film, in my opinion. And I just hope it's a one-off blip and not that he's finally succumbed to studio pressure. Yeah, he did the Cornetto trilogy. He was the director behind that. He was not Simon Pegg versus the World. Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Baby Driver. And I've forgotten the other film he did. So all of his films come with like great visual flair. And there was quite a lot of flair. But they always kind of have this... yeah, that's the Cornetto trilogy. Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and World's End. Like... They... And hey, LP, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. They always have this kind of... like, sense of humor behind them, kind of playfulness. And then before that, he also did Spaced, but I don't think a lot of people outside of the UK or even inside the UK ever watched the TV show Spaced, which was with Simon Pegg. But this one kind of didn't. Like it had a few flashes of it, and a few flashes of kind of the like Edgar Wright always tries to do and pulls off normally fairly well some kind of weird thing. Like Scott Pilgrim versus the World is the most video game / graphic novel film I think that has ever been made. Like he did it really well, even if the story they told probably wasn't the best one for Scott Pilgrim fans. But that's a different issue. I am discussing Running Man, yes. Got to see it last night. And there were a few, I would say, flashes of what I would say is like normally the Edgar Wright brilliance. But yeah, this felt very run-of-the-mill in terms of that. It still puts it above most other films I've watched recently, right? Edgar Wright is just a good director, even if he is being run-of-the-mill and under the studio's thumb, which is kind of what this feels like. I wonder if there will be a director's cut that comes out at some point, which is more subjective and I don't mean subjective, subversive. But I will say, if you only know the Running Man from the Arnie film, I don't think you'll like this one. I really don't. I really don't think you'll like this one at all. It's like the over-the-topness of the Running Man game show in the Arnie version was just fantastic. Like fantastically stupid, which is what the 80s or early 90s, I honestly don't know when Running Man, the Arnie version, came out. But it's what they did so well was over the top stupidness, and I kind of wish we can get back to that. But yeah, not a bad film. Not bad at all. I'd probably say wait until it's out on a streaming service to watch it rather than rush to the cinema, but we are meant to be trying to save the cinema, so I don't know, maybe. The cinema's dead, man. Like, it definitely wasn't one of those films like normally if I've watched the Star Wars in the cinema, like it's an experience, right? Like they're big blockbusters, and seeing it somewhere where the screen is perfect and the sound is great and you get all the rumble and the stuff that you don't normally get at home unless you spent, you know, a lot of money trying to do a home theater. Going to the cinema adds something to those kind of films. Wouldn't say it added to The Running Man. Oh dear. But yeah, not bad. I'd give it a solid 3. A 3 out of 5 Running Man. For context, I'd probably give Arnie's 4. Definitely a better version than what's the one where he's from Mars but he's not from Mars, but he's also been to Mars but never been to Mars? The title is something about memory. Total Recall. It's much better than the version of Total Recall they did with Colin Farrell. I think it was. Oh, but anyway, we're not here today just to talk about The Running Man. We got some work to do. I know, you work. So a little bit of context, I guess. I will give. Just it's definitely just not me procrastinating. So I don't have to start working. It's giving context, necessary context around an idea. What the fuck was I talking about? I don't know. So yeah, so trying to come up with this CakeyVerse Adventures idea, which is I'm planning on weekly, thinking it's probably going to be monthly, at least to begin with, just because of how much work is involved. Audio / a rough animation coming in at some point down the line. For the initial one, I'm trying to use Tailspire just to do basically crudely animated still shots, just to run through the story, and then I'm hoping I can improve it from there. But I'm not concentrating on the Tailspire side. I'm concentrating on the audio side, and once that's done, that'll go out, and then I'll try to do the video side afterwards. But anyway, so CakeyVerse Adventures has got different sections, and one of those sections I'm bringing back the Overworld News, which is something I did a one-off thing a long time ago, and it's basically just like no stop motion claymation. Do you know? So I was playing around in Tailspire with being our train of thoughts going off on a tangent. I've been playing around with Tailspire, and trying to do stop motion in Tailspire would be possible. Not easy because it does not have particularly good camera controls. And this is kind of the big thing I'm fighting. And, you know, Tailspire is not designed to be a recording thing, right? It's meant to be a 3D virtual tabletop so you can play your D&D games on it, and it works very well at that. So, you know, trying to force this kind of thing through it is quite difficult. And one of the things, if you have, I think we did one session on Tailspire just to play around with it a long time ago, and it's come a long way since then. It looks good from a streamer perspective, as someone who at the time was looking at it streaming D&D stuff. Having it be in Tailspire it was a lot more engaging to watch. But one of the things you run into all the time with Tailspire is bad line of sight, bad cameras, all this kind of stuff. And trying to use it as a kind of impromptu recording studio just kind of exacerbates those issues. But yeah, kind of part of me is like, and again, I think this comes back to that dream. I don't know if anybody remembers when I had that dream about a model castle that was built in a room that I've never been in before. That was surrounded by cameras. So I'm wondering if in my dream, I'm getting to the idea that, do you know what? Actually, I want to be able to film this and start 3D printing all of the backgrounds, the characters, all that kind of stuff, and actually recording it in stop motion. But yeah, we ain't going to start doing that. One, I don't have the room. Two, I don't have the money. And three, I definitely don't have the patience for that right now. But anyway, where was I going? Yeah, so as part of that, bringing back the Overworld news. And as part of the Overworld news, so the whole idea of the Overworld news is that it reports on stuff that's happened around the CakeyVerse. So Season 0 is going to be kind of difficult. Because Season 0, the story that we're telling, bookending CakeyVerse Adventures every episode, there'll be two portions of the story in each one at the start, one at the end. That story is kind of telling the story of how the first people we're following, at least. Hey, Rogu. Welcome. Who are the last wizards? Hey, welcome, Imran, and cheers for the lurk as well. We're kind of telling the story of how they end up in the CakeyVerse, and technically, I say good morning anyway. Don't make me learn sign language so I can sign it to you. I can do a British version of good morning, but I would have just stuck my middle finger up. Oh dear. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, my train of thought today, honestly. Yeah. So the Overworld news is meant to be reporting on the news of what's happening around the CakeyVerse, and as part of that, and as part of all of this, I want the CakeyVerse to be something that is kind of living and breathing outside of the main stories I'm also telling. And there's going to be a lot of work that goes into that. You know, if there's wars going on, battles, kind of go through those. And part of me is like, with all this kind of stuff, I would really like to be able to do a lot of this on screen, in Discord, whatever, YouTube, however it's going to work. And really kind of, I don't know, spend a lot of time in the CakeyVerse and then condensing it all together into this thing at the end. But as part of the Overworld news, I've put three characters in the Overworld news. One is the news anchor, who is basically, hey, thank you for the 15 stream streak as well. I know you can't hear me say thank you, but I'm saying it anyway. Yeah, so I put three. So one is the anchor. The anchor is basically me, but incredibly posh. There's a sports. Yeah, the robot is weather. So the person doing the weather is a robot. And then there's a sports guy who I haven't really fleshed out particularly well yet. But I do want them to have sports that they can report on, right? As I said, for the Season 0, because the CakeyVerse doesn't exist, the Overworld news sections are going to be a little bit strange. Until probably like episode 4. But, you know, that's a problem I have to deal with. But yes, I would like there to be some kind of sport, or sports plural, but for now we'll just concentrate on a sport going on that we can kind of follow as part of the Overworld news. Now, I could just decide to look at real sports results, do some kind of fictionalized version of them, and then work through it like that. But I'm like, I kind of don't want to, right? I kind of want to invent a sport that can be played in the CakeyVerse. And then possibly something I could also play on stream if we have a good enough idea for how it would work, right? Like dice based. So kind of thing like Blood Bowl, but obviously not Blood Bowl because we'd get sued. And all this kind of stuff. Okay, so the sport that we're creating would not have magic involved in it, right? The whole idea of the CakeyVerse is that different things can be combined, right? Different magic systems, different non-magic systems, different levels of technology, all this kind of stuff will all kind of be shoved together. So although the sport itself would not have magic involved, that does not mean that a team could not exist that has magic and could use it to their advantage, because using Airbud logic, if it doesn't say in the rules that you can't, then we can do it, right? So I think, yes, there will be magic in the world. And I think in terms of how the game is played, there will end up teams. So it's like every sport ever, basically. Yeah, right? You know, think of like Formula One is probably, sorry, the best example of this kind of thing, right? Because they keep on doing things that it doesn't say you can't do in the rules until the rules are changed to say, no, you have, every car has to be the same, because it's meant to be a test of the driver rather than a test of the vehicle. Is how, you know, F1 at one point was just who's got the fastest car, right? They were all doing different things to the cars, made it a fairly boring sport to watch. I still think it's a fairly boring sport to watch. The cars are loud, so that's something. But you know, it's now, because all the cars are essentially the same, you're not allowed to do a lot different to your car than any other team. It's now a thing of, you know, tactics and driver skill. But yeah, I wanted to come up with a, you know, with a sport. Now, again, I'm very much thinking it from a kind of tabletop perspective. Like this is a sport that you would play with dice and little miniatures. For the teams. We're probably going to have to come at it with some kind of, you know, basis. In fact, you know, obviously Blood Bowl uses American football. I think there are quite a few that actually use American football as their kind of base for this kind of thing. There was one that tried to do soccer / real football. But I never saw a lot of that one. You forgot the name of the race, but the one where they raise crotch rockets, apparently the bikes are so loud they have 2 forms of ear protection on. I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all. Motorbikes can be bloody loud. There is a fantastic board game I never thought I would enjoy, which is actually based on F1 race driving based on dice rolls, which actually works surprisingly well. Yeah, it's trying to come up with, and again, taking a little bit of inspiration from Flick when he did the Fallout board game stuff, where he was carrying the base on and the characters and all that kind of thing. You know, like a little bit of storytelling in board game stuff, but with a little bit more. With the CakeyVerse Adventures and the Overworld News, with a little bit more care on the storytelling, right? And the different teams and the rivalries and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and you know, the reason to make it and that's kind of the reason why I'm trying to come up with a sport of my own, so we can create teams, we can create stars, all that kind of stuff, have them play against each other, and then like kind of the stories are made as the game plays out, much like real sports, right? Real sports are, at their basis, at their core, are boring as hell. But it is the social drama that comes out of them that makes them appealing to watch. So yeah, kind of if I can have my own thing, and yeah, and then going back to Roger's point, if we can then bring up, okay, but we've got a very high fantasy, high magic team coming in. How would they play this? Like, what could they do within the rules to kind of give them an advantage, but not too much of an advantage that it can't be countered by someone who's, you know, basically coming in at Captain Caveman level technology. I've no idea where to start this. At all. Could do hockey make it so the inventor team never wins like in real life? I think it definitely has to be a contact sport, right? Because I was thinking, like, could you do a ridiculously fantasy / explosive version of curling? Was one of the ideas I had last night while I was thinking about this. I then actually looked up another side note. This is why I never get any work done. Another side note. You can have a super tech team that doesn't use magic but science too. Yeah, exactly. Right. So you can come in from whichever race, technology, whatever I've brought in to the CakeyVerse at the time would kind of dictate their team's play style. Again, very much like Blood Bowl. Like Blood Bowl does that fairly well, right? You know, I think it's the ogres or the orcs. Actually, I think it's the goblins who have got the ogres. I honestly can't remember. But, you know, they've got the great big bullies, so they kind of like bully their way through the game, whereas the elves were very fast and could throw very well, if I remember correctly. But yeah, you know, it kind of like brings it in differently, right? You know, somebody with magic might be able to use a portal to get from one side of the field to the other, right? You know, which is something that could be interesting. And then if you've got a, you know, let's say you bring the universe from Cars into the CakeyVerse. Obviously, it wouldn't be called Cars; it'd probably be called Vans. But then you then have a team of sentient vans playing against, you know, a possible human, elf, whatever team kind of idea, right? So it's having a base where you can then, the flavor comes from the teams rather than kind of the base game itself, but the base game itself has to have enough about it that you can kind of exploit this kind of thing. But yeah, I was trying to say, like, could you do like a team like a game like curling or bulls or what is it known as around most of the world? I don't think it's pronounced Bocky, but I think that's how they spell it. It's also known as Petonk over here, but that's not going to help most people. But I don't think having this kind of more passive team thing really works in this kind of idea, right? And then yeah, side note, someone has made a curling game where you throw dice down a curling board. And honestly, I'm amazed it's taken somebody that long to come up with that very simple idea. But anyway. That's beside the point. And you know, and in many ways, it doesn't even have to be sports ball based, I guess. You know, going back to like kind of video game type stuff. You know, arena battles. You could do arena battles, but that's not really what I want to do for this one. But like, you know, you could do like capture the flag. You do some kind of paintball thing. I think having it be, start making some notes here. I think you want a contact sport. I think we're thinking 2 teams. Let's drag this to the middle. I'm not thinking an open field necessarily, though. Like, I'm not thinking like a football stadium where it's all open, or hockey or ice hockey or anything like that. Of course, probably the most famous made-up sport, I know we're not meant to talk about J.K. Rowling anymore, but fuck it, I'm going to, is Quidditch. And one of the things they definitely don't want to put in is some stupid rule like the Golden Snatch, which makes the whole rest of the game completely fucking pointless. Which she has said after the fact was the point, but I don't believe her after the fact statements. Oh dear. I mean, there has to be some kind of arena, some kind of playing field, but I think it could contain buildings, cover, that kind of stuff. All right, are we talking? Well, there has to be some kind of goal. But are we talking like scoring points? Score then reset, or would you score then win? I don't know. I could give it a unique field for each team as well that adds a modifier to how it's played. Definitely could do. Yeah, I mean, I think you would definitely want home and away fields, right? Or home and away arenas, because I just think that's fun, or at least different arenas that it could be played in. And then, yeah, and if they were home and away arenas, you would imagine that the home arena would always play to the home team's advantage, right? Because they would design it around their play style. And then the advantage with that is that when you play away, the away team then has the advantage, right? Because it's then their home team. So you kind of... Yes, you can put in different ideas, different things that definitely make it easier for the home team to win. But then when they go away, they're at the disadvantage. So it kind of balances that way. I like that. I know that's a good idea. Nope. It's just some random, hopefully DRM free music playing in the background. I haven't loaded up Overwatch already. The only reason I kind of want like a ball or kind of some kind of object to chase is so we can do multi-ball. Oh dear. Probably not the best reason to try and decide on something, but you know, there you go. But yeah, you want two teams. You want the teams to if you're playing a board game, how many people do you really want to roll for on each turn before it comes boring? Let's say 6. Let's say maximum 6 per team. And then we can take it from there. And then you really want to... So there's going to be stats, names, etc. What is multi-ball? Multi-ball is where if there was one ball, now there's many balls. I can't even remember if they had it in Lucio Ball, but I think Lucio Ball is where I started saying it. Oh dear. Crystal clear now. Well, I don't know what multi-ball would be in this. But yeah, like you know, a lot of things do it. Like pinball will do it, right? Where suddenly you'll have, you know, rather than just the one pinball, you'll have many pinballs that you can try and hit round. I don't know. So what if you had... This is where I wish I had a piece of pen and paper. So I could draw stuff out. Did I ever do that thing on... One moment, please. I kind of did. Okay, yes, I definitely did. I'm kind of thinking, you know, what if you had I don't particularly want a square. I mean, a square is fine. You know, if you've got your arena, can I do like scribbles? See, so what if you had like a goal in the middle? What if the goal could move? Anyway, let's kind of do this thing. So you kind of got the goal in the middle. You probably would split the field in half, at least for kind of like setup purposes. And then you kind of had... This is sounding very similar to something I think that already exists and that I think I've already played. So somebody tell me if they get what it is I'm channeling here. Pretty sure I'm channeling something. But I can't quite remember what it is. So then kind of like around this kind of central circle is where you play. Then you could do like kind of would you want it multi-level? I think probably yes. one of the interesting things about doing like Quidditch, with it being on brooms and kind of like doing like fights in space and stuff, is that just like airplanes, is the idea of having 3D space and kind of trying to use that to your advantage. Let me go back over here. All right, so it's one goal, and it depends who throws the ball in. You'd want to make sure, again, this is kind of more thinking of it as from a table top perspective. You would want to make sure that the game can't go on forever. I don't see how there's any advantage in trading sides, although honestly, there really isn't any advantage in most sports that do that. So I guess you can. Gives you a chance to set up. This is kind of where I'm going. Yes, LP, kind of, right? What I'm trying to decide is, do you have a red ball and a blue ball, or do you just have the one ball? It's kind of getting a little bit of capture the flaggy right now, right? If you think about it there. So, let's say the blue team is over here and the red team is over here. Then the blue ball would be here or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But let's say the ball that you need to score with is in the opposing side. I'm kind of thinking, and again, possibly Quake did this game mode, and I'm just channeling an old Quake Arena game mode completely here. I honestly can't remember. But yes, I'm kind of thinking something like, so let's say you put a 12 round max on the game, right? But the ball, once picked up, has a, I don't know, 4 round countdown, right? So after 4 rounds, if you haven't scored, the ball explodes. Whoever's holding it. Because the interesting thing there is you can then try and use it to your advantage, right? Even trying to use the explosions to your advantage. You know it's going to explode in 4 rounds. You can then kind of throw it towards the enemy team and see how many of them could be taken out. Like, there's something there. But you also know you want to score, because whoever's got the most points wins. I like the idea of most points win. I did a very long line there. Try and get this back roughly in the middle. Also, writing with the mouse is not easy. It's definitely going to be a contact sport. I guess one of the questions is it a fighty sport? Because you can imagine if this, and again, this may already have existed in Quake Arena 3, and I'm just going back to something in my youth. Well, I think what you would like to do with the ball is, and again, maybe this 4 round counter is actually a lot shorter, right? But I think what you'd like to be able to do with the ball is have certain limits. And again, with Hot Potato, it would be if you pass it to a teammate, the countdown would reset, or possibly add one rather than reset, right? So it's always ticking down, kind of, but you might be able to have a certain player type, who can add time to that ball. Or like if we're going into Magic or even using Overwatch characters, like you throw it to somebody like May, they might be able to freeze the ball so the countdown just doesn't go as they're holding it, at least for one turn, right? I think there are things you can do gameplay wise around a ticking clock mechanic to kind of extend it. But yeah, so let's say that's what you're going to do. Your youth would be on copyright length, right? I think this would come down to this kind of idea is something you couldn't copyright. Because I don't think, by and large, although this is being challenged all over the world at the moment by Nintendo, but that's in the video games. In the tabletop space, you can't really copyright rules as such. It's why D&D has their standard edition rules, which are free, because they tried to take. I think it was D&D who tried to copyright rules, and they got told no. But what you can copyright is teams, characters, all that kind of stuff, worlds, stories. See, again, I'm kind of going to, again, apologies if Quake 3 already did this. If this was in Quake, you would still be shooting and fighting at the other people, right? Because that would be how you would try to get your... Again, if you're just playing like a capture the flag type game, part of the game is fighting the enemy, getting them to respawn so you can do your kind of final push to capture the flag. And then as part of that is doing defensive and offensive positions on both teams to try and stop the goal being scored, the ball being picked up, all that kind of stuff, right? The downside to this, which you would definitely want to try and counter, is everybody stays still, everybody turtles around the ball, and nothing fucking happens. AJ's for the lurk, LP. So yeah, you don't want people to be able to kind of turtle around it. Which is kind of why, so maybe you start with your own ball. Right, and if we've kind of got this kind of idea, you could say there's a way in on this side. And there's a way in on this side. You don't want them to be able to come straight down because that's too easy. Right? Now, as the game goes on, and as kind of, okay, so we need to kind of, I should be switching between this and the other thing to write my notes, but I'm just kind of writing them here and I'll never remember what any of this means. Yeah, it's why games like American football and soccer work so well for these kind of games, right? Because your objective is the ball. Okay, yes, you can turtle around the ball, and honestly, Blood Bowl, one of the most annoying things about Blood Bowl is as soon as somebody has scored once, they just play for time, right? They turtle around the ball, play for time, and then they win. To me, that's not an interesting way to play. You kind of want to be able to, and kind of, for me anyway, a lot of people like turtling, and that's fine. For me, you always I always want the thing to be moving forward. I want people to be trying to move forward and push. They slander Tuto Tom and his stinky. It's just I don't like that play style, and it happens in real sports as well, right? You watch most the soccer teams, if they've scored a goal, will then go on the defensive and just try and play for time and waste time, rather than keeping the game going and going for more goals, right? But yeah, this idea of power level and the idea of your kind of power level increasing, like maybe you have, I'll call it mana for want of a better word, because obviously not everyone is going to be magic, but you know, for a game, you have to standardize something. So if there is a resource which is growing as you're playing, you can then do more powerful stuff towards the end, which I think would be interesting. Because then let's say we do this kind of door. I really wish I changed the color of the lines to black so they stood out more. Can I even do that? Okay, how do I make this color actually? Oh, okay, I have to click there. All right. How do I make it look like that even look like it's maybe it did? No, still white. There we go. That's being an idiot. No, that's still white. That is just lines though. I don't know. I don't know the system well enough to know how to do this kind of thing. It also went back to white. There we go. All right. Yeah, because like even if, so let's say you set it up like this, clearly if this is your ball, and let's say you've got, let's say for argument's sake, you've got 6 players, right? You might put 2 on the ball and they're going to be aggressive, right? Which leaves you 2 each side to defend the entrances from the enemy team, right? Or however you're going to do it, right? This could get very stalematey very quickly, right? So I think possibly having the arenas change as the game goes on could also be interesting. I do want goals to be fairly easy to score, because again, I just think that's more exciting to watch and play through, rather than being too much just if you get one, you've probably won. But then, yeah, if you've got the kind of power level, you can then have, you know, let's say the red team here, seeing as I've just got red and I don't want to change the blue. Let's say the red team here has been playing defensively the whole time, right? Let's say they've been playing aggressively, but the blue team has been doing well, has been blocking their advances on the doors. They've managed to control the doors quite well. You'd imagine if they're controlling the doors quite well, they're able to get in and score quite a lot, right? Because that's kind of how that's going to work. And again, we'd have to address that somehow. I don't know how. These guys then decide they got some powers, right? And let's say they got a couple of powers, right? Let's say one of them is they can just knock a great big fucking hole in this wall, right? Run through, play multi-ball, whack them all in, catch up. I don't know if I like that kind of massive swing, because again, you're probably just going to play to that as your strategy, right? And I kind of always want the strategy to be keep on moving. And part of me is wondering, and this is something I really think Battle Royale should introduce at some point. What if just outside the arenas, you have sniper towers, and if you stay still for too long, you get sniped? Because again, we want to encourage movement. You could also encourage movement by the arenas changing. Floors dropping away. Let's head back over here. So we want to encourage movement. I think that's important. Powers could be random instead of static. Well, I think you want to. So I think that the powers comes down to two choices, really. The powers are either arena based and you go and collect them. So again, thinking of Quake 3, if you want any of the power-ups, you have to go and collect them, right? And they're the same for everyone. You just have to get them. And you can then say, based on the arena, the powers could change, or just purely based on a dice roll or a card pull, the powers can change. Or you're trying to say, kind of more Blood Bowl-ish, the powers are more strategic, right? So they're going to be linked to whatever class, race, whatever it is, whatever team you're playing as. And then possibly, because Blood Bowl does have the kind of leveling up mechanic as well, right? For your characters. So your players can become stronger as the season goes on. And again, I would always look at this kind of idea, especially going back to the CakeyVerse Adventures, which is what is spawning this, that this would be season based. So if you've got, I honestly have no idea how many teams a normal division of a sport has. You'd imagine it'd be quite a few, right? Okay, now I didn't ask you about the field size. I want to know how many teams are in a division. All right, how many teams in the NBA? Let's start with that. Okay, so 30 teams, and then you kind of start your... We probably wouldn't go that high. I don't know how much you would need for like a decent bracket. I mean, let's think about it, right? So the final, you're going to have 2. So for the quarterfinals, you need 4. And then we need to go up to 8. And then if you have all of those 8 play each other, that's quite a lot of matches. So you could probably just start with 8 teams, actually. And take it from there. But yeah, I think you kind of want to decide the evolving arena where the goal gets harder for it to be scored in, but the ball has to stay in goal for X time, and there's a drop area and the whole goal gets raised and then tilted with every goal scored in it. Yeah, I think that there's definitely stuff you can do with that as well. So yeah, kind of like and I think this kind of plays into the idea that you've got different arenas as well, right? Because then I think if we say the home team designs their own arena, which I think is a really intriguing concept, and you've got certain things you're allowed to do, you would design it in such a way that the goal is easier for you to score in, right? Within certain limitations. But, you know, let's say you have a team. Let's say you've got the Mandalorian team from Star Wars and they've all got their jetpacks, right? They're going to want to go for the high ground. So they will probably make the goal more accessible from the high ground than the low ground, right? Ah, dear. You could also kind of have the goal. The goal thing is interesting, actually, because you could have that based on random chance. Like at the end of every turn, again, we'd have to define what a turn is and what you can do. You pull a card and that does something to the goal, right? There are definitely things you can do there. And again, thinking purely from a tabletop perspective, having those card draws be arena specific, possibly having teams enabled to add their own cards into it as well to try and swing the advantage more their way. Probably not a 50-50 split, because again, I think cheating is going to be very rife in this kind of game. But rule-based cheating, which means it's probably not technically cheating, but you know what I mean. Which brings in a interesting question. What about refs? All right. I do like the idea of multi-levels. The reason I like the idea of multi-levels is it kind of forces people to move, right? If you know you've got a team of 6, you want to make sure there's at least 7 ways into the goal, right? And I think getting into the goal area is just the initial challenge, right? Because again, you're not going to say every time they throw the ball towards the goal that it's going to go in, right? You're going to have a dice-based percentage chance of scoring. Could do arena-wide natural hazards that come in during a tie after the final turn that can remove a character from play, just get in the way of the goals. Yeah, see, I think things like that, the kind of random chance, because again, if you're coming at it from a player's perspective, you want to be able to bring in some kind of strategy, right? If you're coming at it from a company who's trying to sell this perspective, you want to be able to sell teams and cards and strategies based on their strengths. I'm not coming at it from that perspective, right? I don't care about that side of it. But as a player perspective, you do kind of want to feel you've got some control over how you build your deck, right? But or your team. But I don't want to get into the situation where you play the same game every time, right? You bring your team because that's your strongest team. The team you're playing against should change things. The arena changing also changes things. And then, yeah, having something around the goal as well. I also like chaos. I'm a big fan of chaos. And coming from the story perspective, which again is what this is leading towards, the more chaos there is, the more interactions between the enemy teams and players, the more attempts at goal, the more saves. Haven't even talked about whether, you know, how you can try and save a goal from being scored. All of this is good for the storytelling perspective, right? The more stuff that can go wrong, the better. But again, it's trying to find that balance of there's no point me, or you do it the other way around. Like the teams are incredibly blank. They're basically just for looks. They don't really bring a lot to the table as a team. Just however you want to make them look. And all of the power-ups, all of the randomness is caused by the arena you're on. From my perspective, I want the teams to have more agency than that. Because I know in Quake Champions, you did have the different champions and they had slightly different powers, but really the game was won and lost by what gun you had and if you remembered your timings to go and pick up the 4 times damage multiplier. Right? That's all Quake has ever come down to. Do I know the map? Do I know where the weapons are? And do I know my timings on the power-ups? And can I get there first? Which is kind of why the idea of like a moving goal, you know, rather than having a static goal in the middle, having a moving goal is also kind of interesting. You would probably want to say where the goals are so everybody knows and then have them numbered and then they open up. Or again, kind of the movement of the goals could be map based, right? You know, like if you try to do and again, I'm not going to just rip off known properties, but if you try to do like a Dune based map, you could say the goal, or Star Wars with the Sarlacc pit, whichever one you do, right? Desert based map. You could say the goal is a big worm, right? Big worm's going to move and open its mouth at certain places on the map at different times, right? Possibly at random. And again, that forces people to move, right? It means you can't just block off one area, try to keep people at bay. right? But from a strategy perspective, being able to play, I want to block off this area so they can't get in. I guess in my mind, I'm trying to work out if I was going for people to actually play it, what kind of player would I be going for? And I think the answer to that is the kind of player who just goes in, runs around like a headless chicken and tries to win. Because that's what I would do. That is most definitely what I would do. All right. I think 6 per team works. So the ball has like a, let's say, an expired time limit. I do like the idea that we kind of force people to keep moving. Or if they want to stay in a certain place, they kind of have to play a kind of power to negate the fact that you kind of need to keep moving. I don't think it's. I don't think we're going to do with score and win. I don't think one goal is interesting because then there's no kind of comeback stories, right? And everybody likes a good comeback. But I also don't think score and reset is correct. All right, so I think the question then comes down to, is there one ball or is there one ball per side? We're probably not going to answer any of these questions today. This is literally just meant to be a massive brainstorming exercise. All right, so with the arenas, are we going to worry about terrain? Because again, you might want to, again, if you're, and again, I'm sticking to typical fantasy sci-fi tropes, right? If you're an elf, you're probably going to want to be in a forest-based map because you can use the trees, you can climb trees, you can track quite well, yada, yada, yada. If you're some kind of snow-based polar bear team, you're probably going to want to be in the cold. You can walk on the ice quite well. The other team's probably going to struggle on the ice, might have a, movement dice impairment on any ice-covered stuff. I do like the idea of, I think each arena would have 3 levels. And you'd have the kind of main, and again, if we're thinking of it like a football stadium, right? You've got the grass, which is kind of where the goals are probably always going to be on that main level, right? Whether they're static, whether they move, whatever. Probably always going to be on that main level, right? You can then have an underneath, and where you're, an underneath and above, and the underneath and above are all about trying to get to move around the enemy team so you can get to that middle level, right? And that kind of middle area, which will be protected by walls, to then try and get the goal scored. Having the ball having a time limit on it before it goes in the goal, I think is a good one, right? Especially if there's more negatives to letting it explode. don't know if this works. So if ball expires, lose a point. And again, we could try and go down the kind of like basketball, even American football kind of route where if you score was it in American football? What, a touchdown is 3 and a field goal is 7? Oh, what, basketball, a normal basket is 2 points. And if you do it from farther away, it's 3 points, I think. You could do that. You could say that a goal, you know, as obviously in football, a goal is just a goal. It's 1 point per goal. It doesn't matter what you do. But if you're going to have a negative, and again, you want a little bit of strategy in this. You could say that, again, I kind of like the idea of distance. And again, you know, the further away, the more difficult the throw is going to be, the more time the enemy team is going to have to try and intercept it and do things about it. Touchdowns are 6 field goals, makes a 7, and then you go for 2 instead of a field goal. Oh dear. And then without scoring a touchdown, you have field goals on their own are free. Gotcha. Because then again, you could say if you're 3 goals up, playing in the bows, keeping your ball, letting it explode, and losing a point takes you 2 down. But that might be what you would prefer to do. An own goal penalty would mean there would have to be 2 goals. And I kind of like the idea of just having one central point where both teams are kind of struggling to get to, right? Now, one of the advantages of having the 2 goals is you get to change in your tactics from offensive and defensive, right? And in fact, I think in American football and ice hockey and all these other games, you actually change your teams out depending on which side you're pushing towards, right? You normally have an offensive team and a defensive team, right? Whereas in soccer, you get, I think, free, they're not called transfers, substitutions on your whole team of 11. So you kind of don't really play it that way. Your team is always the same team, but then you do get to play. They opted after COVID, it's 5 now, you think? But yeah, I don't do sports. But yeah, I think because I'm trying to stay away from the kind of turtling idea or the defensive idea, and hockey is more on the fly changes than offense versus defense. Gotcha. I think having the one central point everyone is kind of streaming towards makes sense. It should lead to more interactions. Should. Because again, I'm not going for a heavily tactics-based game, right? I'm going definitely for a more reactive-based game with a little bit of tactics based on the team you're building, the powers you bring in, so you can react differently to what is happening. Premier League teams can make up to 5 subs per match, spread across 3 occasions and at half-time. In addition, teams can make 1 concussion substitution that does not count against the 5. A total of 9 substitutes are allowed on the bench, and 5 players can warm up at the same time. CakeyVerse games played during the World Cup in Qatar and the Heat, where they had to make more subs available. Okay, gotcha. Oh dear. The only other, because like the other sports I was thinking of basing it on, Like curling and games like that didn't really work because I don't see how there's enough kind of like team interaction, team aggression. There can be a lot of snide remarks. And from a storytelling perspective, it's still kind of appealing because trying to build up that tension, something like that would be harder. But the other one is, more back and forth sport like tennis or badminton or like kind of any of those kind of ideas. Where the ball's always in play. As a team, you're trying to make sure the ball remains in play, and you score a point against the enemy by making them miss the ball. I don't know how fun that would be to play in, like from a dice rolling game. I don't really know how you would do it. I think some kind of arena-based skirmish / there's a ball involved game is probably the easiest way to do it. And again, eventually there will have to be more than one sport for the sports person to report on. So oh dear. Because and then like I said, once I come up with this, obviously I think for the first one I'm probably just going to have to beat all teams and play all games. But in an ideal world, having maybe Patreons or just supporters being able to play the teams, I think would be interesting. Or maybe, could I make this the boss fight? God, how long would the games last if we were purely doing this through Twitch commands? Let's not think about that. Let's get the game design first. One thing at a time. One thing at a time. But no, I think that makes sense. I do think that makes sense. I like the idea. So I like the idea that the teams would have their own powers specific to their race, lineage, genre, however we're going to define it, right? The interesting thing then comes, would you want to allow player transfers at some point? Do I want players to be able to die? That's not important. Well, it's not necessarily hugely important right now. But yeah, I like the idea of this, and that you can design your team and bring your powers in. You know the arena you're going to play in. Eventually, you would get to know then what the arenas do, so you can kind of plan your powers accordingly. What am I going to need to try and take on that team at that arena? Which I think is interesting. But I also like the idea of there being power-ups in the arena as well, just for a little bit more randomness and chaos. Like I think these would be like more simple ones, like like speed boost. I'm just gonna do speed boost. That'll be my one example. And then yeah, these would always be. I'm gonna put genre specific here for now, or some kind of bad spelling of that. I like the idea of the 3 levels. So yeah, like another power up that you could have would be like mine, like go more like Mario Kart with the power ups, like mines, banana peels, that kind of stuff. You may want to bring that over here. I don't know. Because again, if you wanted to risk doing a very heavily inspired Nintendo verse in the CakeyVerse, Would be very risky though. Now the trouble with a multi-level thing is you then have to run the game on multiple levels, but I don't think that's too much of a problem. I think, and again, in no way are we thinking of a physical product. Physical product would be more difficult. Well, you know, you'd probably do it the same way, actually. You'd probably, like, if I was going to run it in something like Foundry, I'd probably just have the levels next to each other, right? 1, 2, and 3. And then you can do, like, Cluedo type stuff for where you can kind of maneuver between the two levels. I think on the central level, do I still have my pen out? I do. On the central level here, I think whatever the goal is, because again, if you think about it, if you've got a lower level, and however those lower levels are going to work is purely going to be based on the arena, right? So let's say you did, and again, I don't know if the arenas are going to be like home and away or just kind of based on like, we do a quote unquote Lord of the Rings type arena, and then you kind of try and design. But then the question comes down to, if we were going to do this is obviously purely theoretical. Would you want a Lord of the Rings arena, or would you want a Hobbit arena, an Elf arena, a Gondor arena? I don't know. Because like a Lord of the Rings arena would be kind of interesting, right? Because you can kind of do like orc tunnels, golem caves for the bottom bit, Shire for the top, for the middle bit, or like the field area probably. The sniper towers would probably be the different towers, right? You can have the Eye of Sauron, you can have old Christopher Lee up on his tower, and then the other towers. Dear. But yeah, I think the 3 levels work. So like, yeah, like your main level is always going to be completely open. A little bit of protection around the goal so people just can't run straight to it. But then, I mean, you're not going to have full line of sight. Obviously, if you're playing it, you're always going to know where everybody is. There's no way you can hide people on kind of like a tabletop experience. If it was a video game, you could, right? Which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I think the lower levels would always kind of be more cellar, sewer, tunnel based, right? Not completely open. You can't pop up anywhere on the map unless, you know, you're playing a race who can dig, and then you can dig your own holes and kind of pop up something new, which I think is kind of interesting. And again, based on this hang on. I don't think we had the idea of why aren't you showing up? There you go. Power level. Make sure I got that noted down. I think 12 max rounds. Again, I don't think there's any reason to do half time. Kind of idea, like, you know, it lasts for. The only reason to do half time is because as kind of like an arena reset. Which again, I don't think makes sense, because if you're trying to do tactics, Interesting. Yeah, I don't know about that. Not too sure. All right, let's make some more notes. So then with players, injuries, link death to injuries. Some of these might be going behind my face now. I do like the idea of injuries. I like the idea of substitutions. Because again, you can then, it brings a little bit more tactics to playing against what is happening. You know, again, for an example, if you're playing against someone who's gone like fully tunnel based and they've all gone down to the lower level and they've built tunnels all over, being able to then bring somebody in who can then pour concrete down the tunnels to block them up is a good move to make, right? It's a little bit of tactics. Have I done a thing for time limit yet? I have not. All right, so we're talking rounds. And I'll put the question like halftime, or I know a lot of games are played in like quarters and stuff. Just as a side note, just so I remember, 8 initial teams we would need to come up with to try and put through the ringer, see if this works. Well, 2 to begin with, but I reckon if I've got a decent game, might be able to convince LP to play it with me at some point. Anyway. Yeah, because you got a lot of scope in the arenas. Because again, if like you could bring in a Star Trek Enterprise type arena, right? You know, based on a spaceship would be interesting. All the kind of more, you know, Earth-based ones. It'd have to be some rules around arenas and what you could do, but that's fine. We would need to think about what player stats would be, what powers would be. We've got power level and power cost. Sorry, chat, I'm just thinking silently to myself right now. I think we have something here. Because again, most of the chaos and the stupidity should come from the player, should come from the team. A little bit from the game itself, but most of it should come from the player and what they decide to do. All right, because again, if we just kind of flip back to this, let's say we've designed a team based around the idea of satisfactory, which would be quite difficult, but not impossible. The kind of movement tech they could put in, you know, because again, they could say, They could do like some kind of defensive train, or just a train in general. Like they could do hyper tubes, which would launch them up from corner to corner. All this kind of thing. Someone who's able to kind of like build their own temporary walls and then having the ability to kind of like take them down is also interesting. Have I figured out the game yet? No, nowhere near. Nowhere near, but I think I've got a basic idea. No idea how it would work. Obviously. But no, I like the central goal. Still not sure if I want that goal to this one. Changing goal area. Do we also want the goal? Do we want it to move? Again, I think you would probably do that based on arena. Like some of them may have static goals. And again, maybe that's part of the tactics. Maybe that's part of the tactics is that as you build your team as a player, you also build your arena, which kind of plays into this idea of home and away arenas, right? So as you build your team, you're building your arena based on your strengths and your weaknesses, right? So you may want a more static goal, and a static goal would cost you 1 point. Whereas, you know, let's say you've only got a certain number of points you can spend building your arena. Where every inch is covered by something that works like a jump pad and the goal is constantly moving in a 3D space, so you literally can't stay still. Yeah, right? That could definitely be an arena, right? And if I say to the player, design your arena, these are the things you can buy, based on the currency. Because again, I think if you're going to try and do a league and have these things, like the team is going to evolve, your players are going to power up, you may even be able to power up your arena based on how well you do, right? Again, I think having some kind of in-game currency that you can spend on that kind of thing is interesting, right? And then yeah, being able to say like, this is the the footprint of the arena, and like these are kind of things you can add. And someone is knocking at my door, so I will be right back. No, definitely not in-game microtransactions. All right, so unfortunately, that was the electric company. They're turning the power off. So I guess we're calling it there on the stream. And I won't even be able to get any work done. Otherwise, because all my work is done on computer, so I guess I'm just going to go and have a nap. Hopefully everything will be back by tomorrow. I think we'll carry on with this tomorrow. I mean, yeah, we'll probably carry on with this. I'll probably do some work on this idea off stream as well. Hopefully once the power is back on. So yeah, sorry about the incredibly abrupt ending. It could have been more abrupt. They could not have warned us they were going to turn the power off, I guess. Which is what they normally do. So there's something. So yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all when I see you all, everybody. Bye for now.